thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So what do the candidates say about foreign policy?
The candidates aren't really saying all that much about foreign policy. They've both decided to focus their campaign rhetoric on the economy, and foreign policy has unfortunately taken a back seat to that. President Obama is trying to emphasize his accomplishments, primarily the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, as well as the strategic partnership agreement that he signed in Afghanistan. Mitt Romney, on the other hand, has been focusing on themes of American leadership and trying to assert that he'll be better at American leadership than President Obama has been. But both campaigns are pretty short on specific policies that they actually want to enact in the next term.
So with what is even out there, are there major differences?
I haven't been able to find too many, and I found that really remarkable. Usually there's at least some difference between the two campaigns about the choices and about the policies that they'd want to enact. But when we look at the major foreign crises that are facing the United States, especially the war in Afghanistan, there's just not a lot of daylight between the two campaigns, and I think that's partly why there hasn't been very much debate about it.
And speaking about Afghanistan, what are the plans for Afghanistan?
Both campaigns agree that the transition strategy is the right one to go forward. Where they part ways is Mitt Romney believes that President Obama is accelerating the withdrawal too quickly, so he would like to hold on to a higher number of troops for longer than President Obama does. He's also criticized President Obama for announcing the withdrawal strategy in 2009. But beyond that, both campaigns actually agree on the idea of transitioning control from ISAF, from the United States, over to Afghan soldiers and Afghan police, and having only a training mission remaining in the country after about 2014 or so.
Where does that leave America's struggle with Al-Qaeda?
We don't actually know, and this has been something kind of lurking behind a lot of the campaign rhetoric when we look at what they actually want to do. President Obama can rightly claim a great deal of success in removing senior Al-Qaeda figures from the field of battle. Where he can't really claim a lot of success is actually removing Al-Qaeda as a brand or as a concept that's taking root in different unstable countries around the world. This is where Mitt Romney thinks he can make some headway, although again, his lack of specificity on what he actually wants to do is a barrier to being able to really compare the two plans.
And we've seen over the last few weeks Taliban encroachment and pseudo Al-Qaeda encroachment in some of the military bases in Pakistan.
We have. And Pakistan has kind of been the front line of the war against Al-Qaeda. That's where most of the counterterrorism strikes have happened. That's where the majority of drone strikes that are meant to target specific Al-Qaeda leaders have happened. And that's where people like Leon Panetta, the Secretary of Defense, have claimed the greatest amount of success in stymieing Al-Qaeda, where most senior officials now either say that Al-Qaeda's ability to launch attacks from Pakistan are either completely eliminated or greatly reduced. But recent events, such as the storming of that naval base several weeks ago, suggest that that may not be entirely true. And a challenge in trying to tell whether that's really the case or not has been a lack of transparency from officials about who they're targeting and about what effects those have actually had.
And that links to the work you've been doing on drones.
It does, and one of the focuses of our drones project has been looking at measures of effect, and those are actually really hard to come by. There's very poor data out of northwestern Pakistan about the effects that the drones program has had, both socially, politically, and then also in terms of security. We also have really poor data about how targets are selected, why they're selected for a kinetic strike, for firing a missile at them, and ultimately who else gets caught up in these blasts. And this is true across theaters. It's been true inside Libya, it's been true in Somalia, it's been true in Yemen, and it's been true in Pakistan. So without greater data, it's really difficult to say exactly what these programs are accomplishing in the long run.
And doesn't this have a strategic effect on the challenges and the threats we face when others don't know what we're trying to get them to do?
It does. I mean, ambiguity is always a difficult concept when it comes to international relations, and we've increased a lot of ambiguity about what our actual plans are. And again, we don't know what effects that's going to have. It's going to have an unpredictable effect, though, especially as other countries, namely China, start developing really advanced technology that they can also use to begin their own targeted killing campaigns. I think we're teetering on the brink of something that we really don't want because we don't have this transparency of process and this transparency of data to really understand it.
And going back to the campaign, what are the issues that you think should be discussed?
So what we need to pay attention to is Eastern Africa. There's a tremendous amount of both consolidation and growing insecurity in Somalia, both with the UN-affiliated government and with efforts through the US and to a lesser extent through Ethiopia to try to combat the rise and continued presence of al-Shabaab. This isn't quite East Africa, but what's going on in southern Yemen is also of great concern. Both the Yemeni government and then also the United States, through special forces raids and through drones, has engaged in a tremendous amount of violence over the last 6 months. That's shown progress in terms of retaking actual regions that had been claimed by Al-Qaeda, but it's still an incredibly unsettled place, and there's still a great deal of violence and uncertainty about the political fate of that country. Looking more broad, I think Afghanistan needs to be on the agenda, and it worries me a lot that it's not, that neither campaign is talking about it. When the election happens in November, we're going to have 68,000 troops still in the country that are going to cost around $70 billion a year. Both campaigns right now are bickering about how to balance the budget and how to cut spending, but they're not talking about an enormous expenditure that the government is undertaking in Afghanistan. And I think that has to be on the agenda if they're going to make any kind of leeway on this. Looking more broad, there are issues such as the financial crisis that's roiling Europe that could have a catastrophic effect if they end up unraveling the euro as a common currency, leading to a budgetary crash within NATO. We don't really understand how these processes are happening, and we really don't understand what effects they're going to have if the worst case scenario happens, but I think that's why we need to be paying attention to them.
Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you.